What's up, everyone? Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the new Timo Tjahjanto film, The Big Four, out now and available to stream on Netflix. Originally, I was planning to cover another movie or two first, but when I found out that this one was available to stream, I dropped those immediately because I am a big Timo Tjahjanto fan. In fact, I've become a huge fan and advocate for Indonesian genre filmmaking in general over the past few years. Like, seriously, Indonesia at this point is the new Korea as far as good, solid genre cinema goes. Nearly everything that they've been releasing over the past almost 10 years or so now has just been kicking Hollywood's ass left and right and up and down. And Timo Tjahjanto is at the forefront of that movement for me, with The Night Comes for Us being my personal favorite of his, and in my opinion, one of the strongest martial arts movies of the past 10 years at least. Why don't they let this guy direct a new Mortal Kombat movie? Seriously. Oh, and that's right. P.S. I also forgot to mention, I loved his sequence in VHS 94. Holy crap. And I also have a real fondness for an older movie of his from 2009 or so called Macabre, a horror film that even at this point in his career remains largely overlooked. If you have any kind of affinity for Asian horror or just horror in general, you owe it to yourself to check out Macabre wherever you can find it. Dig it up. It is well worth your time. Just in general, seriously, if you're a fan of action or horror and you haven't seen a Timo Tjahjanto film, like, really, what are you doing with yourself? How are you spending your life? Watching this channel, probably. Jesus Christ, man, what's wrong with you? Really though, when I found out that he had released a new film, I dropped everything I was doing. I did not bother to glance at a single still photo, synopsis, trailer, nothing. I went into it completely blank because anything with this guy's name on it is going to be top-notch work. Plus, I'm increasingly fond of going into a movie cold. It just seems to always be a much more enriching, fun, and interesting experience for me. It wasn't really that long ago that that is just how audiences would have done it, period. As far as the movie itself goes, this definitely continues Timo Tjahjanto's winning streak in my book. It's probably not one I'm going to revisit as often as I would The Night Comes for Us or Macabre, but it was still a solid piece of entertainment, even if it did feel a little bit long at 2.5 hours. At the very beginning, the biggest departure that I noticed in this film from his previous films is the increased sense of humor and tongue-in-cheek tone. There's one sequence early in the film that involves one character trying to hide the fight he's having with two guys while he's behind a hotel desk. It has such an abundance of influence from silent comedy and slapstick comedy that it really feels like the most violent Jackie Chan scene Jackie never filmed. That's not to say that on the whole, this is Timo Tjahjanto's attempt at doing a Jackie Chan style action comedy exactly. Tonally, this feels a little more in line with something like the Deadpool movies or that movie with Clive Owen and Paul Giamatti, Shoot 'Em Up, that came out a while ago. Maybe even just a shade of that late 90s movie with Mark Wahlberg in it called The Big Hit. Although this is a much better movie than The Big Hit. I will say that right now just to avoid scaring anybody away. On a side note, I will also say that that is definitely a movie that has not aged well. Holy crap. Ugh. And while this means that the movie is not necessarily as impactful as something like The Night Comes for Us, I can also appreciate that Timo Tjahjanto at this point in his career seems like the kind of guy who isn't particularly interested in repeating himself. Even if at times this does almost feel like his attempt at a more commercial, crowd-pleasing hit, I can still at least respect the fact that he shows great range. And the movie did make me laugh out loud and even catch me off guard with a couple of jokes in places where I wasn't expecting it more than once. Especially in the last act of the movie, there was more than one point where I thought that he was falling back on a more wearisome cliche, only to bring a joke in at just the right moment to skewer that cliche and pull the rug out from under me as a viewer. Learning the ability to play your audience like a piano that way, as Alfred Hitchcock used to say, is not nearly as easy as it looks. Certainly not anywhere near as easy as Tjahjanto makes it look in this movie. Elsewhere, the humor is a bit of a mixed bag. Some of the vulgarity is pretty inspired. Other times it's such juvenile bathroom humor that it's almost a little bit embarrassing. But fortunately the cast, who are at least partly made up of returning Tjahjanto performers at this point, are all likable and energetic enough that they can overcome some of the small blips in the script like that. I also think that some of the less successful moments of comedy in the movie probably could have just been cut out altogether, especially considering that this movie is almost 2.5 hours, which really blows my mind, and not necessarily in a good way. I'd have to go back and check, but I'm not even sure if The Night Comes for Us was almost 2.5 hours. But if it was, it at least justified its runtime, whereas this film probably has a 90-minute plot at best. It is also my overwhelming personal opinion that when you're doing a movie that has kind of a light, cheeky tone like this, it kind of behooves you to have a brisk running time. Not to mention the fact that the movie ends with a pretty direct setup for a sequel, so I don't really see why he thought he had to cram this much into one movie. But let's be real, nobody goes into a movie like this looking for a refined dramedy like Terms of Endearment or As Good as It Gets or something like that. You watch a movie like this for blue humor and body count, and you most definitely get that. In fact, I would say that the choreography of the violence is the part of this movie that feels the most like a Timo Tjahjanto film as I know him. Heads roll, heads explode, heads get gaping holes shot in them, limbs and entrails explode and just fly all over the place like a piñata exploded at a cannibal party. Even if you are someone like me who prefers perhaps the more serious side of Timo Tjahjanto's work as a filmmaker, I don't think anyone is going to complain that this movie does not have enough violent action. I only have one nitpick I can mention with the action in this movie, and that involves one character's bazooka, which in more than one instance does not do nearly as much damage as you would think it should. And yeah, I know, it's silly to bring that up in what is essentially a live-action cartoon, but there's a couple of occasions where this bazooka is shot at close range. Once it essentially goes off in someone's face, I mean, all that they do is close a wicker door in front of it. The other time, it detonates right between someone's legs, pretty much. And both times, they walk away from it with barely a scratch. In that first instance, I actually said, "Oh, come on," out loud at the TV. Whatever it probably cost this character to buy that thing on the black market, they got ripped off big time. But then again, human heads and other body parts don't explode and squoosh the way that they do in this movie either, so I don't know how mad I can get about that ultimately. So overall, while I don't think this movie is going to stick with me the way that The Night Comes For Us does, or the way that Macabre did, or even both of his May the Devil Take You movies for that matter, it still maintains Timo Tjahjanto's place in my mind as the king of the hill of Indonesian genre filmmakers. And it's undeniably fun, and hey, at the end of the day, there is nothing wrong with having a little fun. And it is once again available to stream fresh and hot on Netflix, so anyone who's a genre fan will definitely want to check this one out. So until next time, thanks once again for watching, guys, and I will catch you all again real soon.